Anything that smacks of price fixing, that I don't think works.
Is this plan to ban price gouging anything more than a gimmick, Governor?
I think it speaks to Kamala Harris's values.
It seems like totally unworkable, first of all, for the FTC to be deciding like how much Kroger charges for eggs.
Is this just a ploy? Because it sounds kind of like it. But is it really policy? I mean, price gouging?
Well, Catherine Rampell, the Washington Post columnist and NewsHour contributor, said it's impossible to exaggerate how bad this policy is. And I agree with that.
In Venezuela, Hugo Chavez went on a socialist spending spree, which sent food prices skyrocketing. So he had the same idea as Harris and capped food prices. And Venezuela went from one of the richest countries in the world to one of the poorest.
Kamala proposed doing exactly what Hugo did, controlling the price of food.
And I will work to pass the first ever federal ban on price gouging on food. My plan will include new penalties for opportunistic companies that exploit crises and break the rules.
Talked about the profits of grocery stores. Their margins are incredibly thin. For every dollar sale, they make profits of around 1 to 3 cents. Just try proving that their price gouging is going to be incredibly difficult beyond anything else.
We've seen it happen in Venezuela. We've seen it happen in the Soviet Union. Price controls just don't work. It expresses a level of economic illiteracy.
We've seen this kind of thing tried in lots of other countries before. Venezuela, Argentina, the Soviet Union, et cetera. It leads to shortages. It leads to black markets, plenty of uncertainty.
It sounded a lot like this notion that we were going to set price control, that we were returning to the 1970s. You can't pay more than, let's say, $2.50 for milk. And if you do, we're going to charge the grocery store with some criminal act. And obviously, this hasn't worked, these sorts of policies.
The time has come for decisive action, action that will break the vicious circle of spiraling prices and costs. I am today ordering a freeze on all prices and wages throughout the United States for a period of 90 days.
Nixon's price freeze triggered shortages and even more inflation. And then 90 days later, he got rid of them.
I'm old enough, though, to remember Richard Nixon, how well those price controls worked and the great inflation of the 1970s. Look, whenever government creates a big problem, and this inflation problem is government created, government then says, you got to give us more powers, more control to deal with the problem we created. And that's what we see unfolding here.
It is a device that governments have repeatedly resorted to try to cover up the effects of their own policies. It is offered as a cure for inflation. It is not a cure for inflation. It has never been a cure for inflation. It is an alleged cure that is far worse than the disease.
Looks like we might be seeing the beginning of the end of the media's honeymoon phase with Kamala Harris. Here is some of the reaction to the first and only policy platform we have heard so far from the Democrat nominee.